Morning. Man, it is just great to be with you guys today. My name is Chris Cummings. I'm the lead pastor here at Doxa. And if you're new today, man, we just want to say welcome. Man, we're so glad that you're here with us. Thank you for trusting us with your Sunday morning. We do not take that lightly by any means, and we do hope and pray that this place feels like home very quickly and very easily for you. On your way in, you should have received a program that looks like this. On one side is a list of announcements. At the bottom of that program is a little connect card. And if you are new to Doxa, we would love just to connect with you and meet you. And one of the best ways for us to be able to do that is for you to fill out this card. Once you fill it out, you can do one of two things with it. You can either put it in the offering baskets when they get passed later on in the service, or you can go to our next step area, which is the lobby when you first walk in, and exchange it for a free gift. That's where I'll be after service, and I would love just to meet you, connect with you, introduce myself, and then also just give you a gift to say thank you for joining us today. And so again, we're just so glad that you're here. If you have a Bible with you, go ahead and open up to the Psalm chapter 40. That's where we're going to be today. We're going to look at the entire psalm together. If you don't have a Bible with you, don't worry. We'll have the verses on the screen behind me so that you can easily follow along. And if you don't own a Bible, we'd love to give you one. You can grab one at one of our hospitality kiosks by these exit doors before you leave today. Psalm chapter 40 is where we're going to be. And as you're turning there, here's how I want to start. I want to start with this question. And the question I want us to start with and consider is this: has there ever been a moment in your life when you have felt stuck? Another way to maybe even deepen that question would potentially be to ask, has there ever been a moment when you have felt hopeless? I remember several years ago, my wife and I went on a date. At the time, we were living on an island off the coast of Texas. Yes, Texas does have islands, okay? We went on a date, and after dinner, we decided, let's just go hang out on the beach. At the end of the island was this little area where you could drive your car on the beach and just kind of hang out for a little bit. And so that's what we did. We went to dinner, drove out onto the beach, found a great spot, just kind of hung out there for a little bit. It was nice, it was relaxing, it was amazing. And then, after that time was over, we needed to go home in order to relieve our babysitter. And as we got in the car, we realized that getting out of where we were was going to be a lot difficult than getting where we were. And the reason why was because at that point in time, the sun had begun to set where we were, and we couldn't quite see where the sand was nice and compact so you could easily drive, and where sand was really loose and you might get stuck, okay? And so we're driving back and forth along this beach. We've already lost how to get out. We don't know where the road actually is. We're just driving back and forth trying to find where we can possibly go. We see some tail lights in front of us. They seem to be getting back on a road. We're like, I guess we're going to follow them. And sure enough, moments later, we were completely stuck. I mean, there was nothing that we could do to unstuck ourselves at this point. We tried flooring it. We tried putting it in reverse. We tried putting more sand around the tires to see if it might grip it and get over it, as if that was going to work. Nothing worked. And in that moment, I remember looking at my wife and just feeling completely hopeless. Like, oh my gosh, how did we get ourselves in this position? Our Subaru can't handle this. And we're looking around and we don't really see anybody. Everybody else had already left before the sun went down completely. And we're just stuck on a beach with our car in the sand, and it's completely dark and no one's around us. 30 minutes go by. We finally see a truck pull in around where we were. The guy sees us. We write SOS in the sand. He's like, I got to go help these people. Pulls in. Guy gets out of his giant truck and with the most southern accent just goes, looks like y'all are stuck. And in my mind, I'm just thinking, well, yeah, like, of course we're stuck. Like, we didn't just park here thinking this is a great place just to spend the night, right? And so he eventually helped us, pulled us out of the sand, and we got back onto solid ground and ended up finding our way home. And I think for some of us today, the reason why I share that with you is I think for some of us, if we were going to describe kind of the state of our life right now, I wonder how many of us, the word that we would use to describe it is the word stuck. That if we were just honest, that we would feel, man, just in my life, I feel stuck. Maybe for some of us, maybe we've been stuck for such a long period of time that what we feel right now is not just stuck, but we feel a sense of hopelessness in us. Maybe that sense of hopelessness comes because of sin that we've been battling for a really long time that we just can't seem to get past. And no matter what we're trying and what we're doing, we just feel like we're stuck in the same spot day after day after day and year after year after year. Maybe for some of us, maybe it's not sin. Maybe it's just suffering. Like maybe you got earlier that diagnosis that you were hoping that you wouldn't get. Or maybe someone that you know, someone that you love deeply got that diagnosis. And right now you're just looking at this mountain in front of you and you're just feeling stuck and hopeless and helpless. Maybe it's finances. Maybe it's anxiety and depression that you've had this thick, dark cloud around you for far too long and you've been wanting it to get off and you just feel stuck. Maybe you have a toddler and life just always feels stuck, right? I wonder how many of us today in our lives that we just feel in this moment as if we are just stuck. And maybe for some of us, we've been stuck in the mud, stuck in the sand for so long that we begin to wonder if we'll ever actually get out. And if that's you today, man, let me just start off by saying there is hope for you. And we find that hope in the scriptures, and specifically we find that hope for us today in Psalm chapter 40. Because what the psalmist is going to tell us today is the psalmist is going to declare that at one point in his life, he found himself in a similar situation. That he was stuck in what he calls a pit, that it was a dire situation, and yet what he also declares in his testimony, that there is a God who loves you, who sees you, who hears you, and has the power to rescue you and deliver you wherever it is that you find yourself today. And that's what we're going to see in this psalm. And so if you're stuck right now, man, this psalm is just an overwhelming encouragement for us as we might find help and hope. And if today you're someone who you're like, I'm not stuck, like I just don't feel like I'm in that spot. I think the reality is that for many of us at some point in our life, we will inevitably find ourselves there again. And the psalmist gives us words of encouragement to handle those times in our life. But not only that, but the psalmist reveals to us how we can also step in and help those that find themselves in the midst of the pit. So my hope for us today is that we will find genuine hope in a God who can redeem, who can save, and deliver us no matter where we find ourselves today. And so starting in Psalm 40, starting in verse 1, we're going to look at all the verses together. We'll walk through it little by little. And the first 3 verses, here's what it says. The psalmist declares, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He drew me up from the pit of destruction, out of the miry bog, and set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. As the psalmist opens up his psalm, he starts with a sense of gratitude and thanksgiving. He reminds himself that there was a moment in his life where God rescued him out and put him on a firm foundation. He says that he's on a solid rock, that he is safe and he is secure. And as he reflects back on what God has done in his life, the way that he describes his past circumstance is he uses 2 primary phrases to describe it. He says, I was in a pit of destruction and a miry bog. Now that phrase, miry bog, some commentators translate it to mean wet clay. It's like a muddy foundation. And so here's the imagery that the psalmist is trying to paint for us today. The imagery is that he is in a pit, he's surrounded by all sides, and the foundation in which he's standing on is a muddy foundation, and he's beginning to sink down into the foundation like quicksand. And the picture that he's trying to paint here is as if he is moments away from death. That he's already under the earth, already under the ground, and he's sinking down deeper and deeper and deeper. As if he's telling us, I had 1 foot in the grave. I was on my way to death. And notice that as he finds himself in what appears to be a hopeless and helpless pit, that what the psalmist does in this moment is he just cries out to God for help. He recognizes the helplessness and the hopelessness of his circumstance and situation. And what the psalmist does in the midst of that is just cries out to God for help. The first verse starts off with, I waited patiently for the Lord. In order to wait patiently for the Lord means at least two things for us. The first thing it means is this. It means that as the psalmist cries out for help, that God does not rescue him in the time frame that the psalmist was hoping that he would be rescued. That's what it means to wait patiently. That rescue doesn't happen in that window. And the second thing that it tells us is that even though rescue doesn't happen in a time frame that the psalmist would have liked for it to happen, notice that the psalmist continues to fix his eyes on the Lord. To wait patiently on God means first that God doesn't respond with rescue in the time frame that we were hoping he would respond. And secondly, that even though that is the case, the psalmist still sets his eyes on God. He still knows that God is his only hope for rescue and salvation and deliverance. He doesn't turn to anything else. It's not like he cries out to God, God doesn't answer in a few days, and then he's like, don't worry, God, I can get myself out. He doesn't look for another source of deliverance. His hope is found only in God. And so right out of the gate, as we start this psalm, here's the first question that we need to ask ourselves. The first question that we need to ask ourselves is that when we find ourselves in the middle of the pit, who do you call for help? Who do you cry out to? What the psalmist declares here is that his hope is in God and in God alone. And the reason why his hope is only in God is because he knows that God is the only one that has the power to actually rescue him out. Look at how he continues his psalm. Look at verses 4 and 5. He says, blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust, who does not turn to the proud, to those who go astray after a lie. You have multiplied, O Lord my God, your wondrous deeds and your thoughts toward us. None can compare with you. I will proclaim and tell of them, yet they are more than can be told. As the psalmist continues, he begins to anchor his testimony in theological truth. And the first thing he says in verse 4 is that if you turn away from God and start pursuing after something else, if you put your trust in something other than God, he says ultimately what you're doing is you are putting your trust in a lie. He's saying anything else that says that it can rescue you, anything else that says it can redeem you, save you, pull you out of the pit, he says it actually can't. It's just an empty promise. And then if you turn away from God towards something else, that what you're ultimately leaning towards, what you're putting your hope in, is actually a lie. And then he goes on. He goes on and begins to say that not only is God the only one that can save and redeem and deliver, but he also widens the scope of what God can do. He says, look at how amazing your wondrous deeds are. Look at how numerous they are. He says, if I were to spend the rest of my life talking about how great you are and how awesome God is and all the amazing things that he has done, he said, I would run out of breath. They are far more than can be told, which tells us that God has the power to rescue us out of whatever pit we find ourselves in today. And not only that, but no matter how deep the pit actually is, God has the power to rescue you out. But there is no pit too deep for the power of God to step in and to intervene. And the psalmist knows this. And so as he's sinking down into the depths of death, he just cries out to God. And so the question for us is, we're in the pit, so what are we putting our trust in? What are we putting our hope in? Earlier this week, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who leads one of the networks that Doxa is a part of. Doxa is a part of 3 different networks of churches to partner together for the common mission. And these churches are all across the nation. And earlier this week, I got a phone call from one of the executive directors of one of those networks, one of the networks that we've been a part of for a really long time. And I didn't answer the phone whenever he called because we were about to sit down for dinner. And then when I looked at my phone, it popped up that I got a voicemail from him, and it transcribed the voicemail. And all it really said was, hey, call me whenever you get a chance. I need to tell you about Dusty. Now, Dusty's a really great friend of mine. Really great friend. Dusty's lead pastor at a church in Lubbock, Texas, one of the key leaders of this network. I met Dusty back in 2020. He was one of the first people I ever shared the vision of Doxa with 5 years ago. As soon as I told him about Tucson, Arizona, he looked at me and said, what can we do to get you there? And I was like, let's go. We talk on the phone at least once a month just to talk about life, parenting, pastoring, preaching, church planting, all these things. He is one of the godliest men I know. And I got a phone call. I got a voicemail now on my phone that says, call me whenever you can because I need to fill you in and update you on Dusty. And my mind just starts racing. God, what on earth is going on? I give him a call back, go into our room, call him, come out of the room, and I am just in tears. Kristen looks at me like, what on earth is going on? I was like, well, apparently, about a week ago, Dusty was having some chest pains. He's had chest pains for a few weeks now. They got worse. He was also having some fevers that wouldn't go away, and so he went into the hospital, and they began to run some tests. And they drew some blood and ran some blood work, and there were some results that came back that were not positive at all. They started doing some more scans, and over the course of time, they discovered that all throughout his spine is cancer. And man, that news hit me hard. He was one of the godliest men I know, constantly shepherding, constantly pastoring, faithful to his calling. And I hear that, and all of a sudden now, him, the church he leads, the network he's a part of, every one of us just feels like now we're in a pit together. And apparently it's spread pretty bad, and they don't know the full solution or the full answer yet at this point in time, but there's a lot of hopelessness and helplessness that they're feeling right now. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they find themselves in a pit. And yet, what's amazing at the same time is every single person that I've talked to that knows the situation well, that's a part of the situation, every single one of them says, yes, this has been unexpected to us, but God knew it was coming. And every single one of them said, we are trusting in the faithfulness of God no matter the outcome. Even if the worst of the worst things happen, we know that God is faithful and that with everything that we experience, there is God-glorifying purpose behind it. And if you're in the pit today, that's the second thing you need to know. The first thing you need to understand is that God alone can rescue you out. He has the power to. There is no pit too deep. The second thing you need to understand is that there is purpose in every pit. That there is a God-glorifying purpose behind every single thing that we go through. And that's what we see next. Look with me at verses 6-8. It says, in sacrifice and offering you have not delighted, but you have given me an open ear. Burnt offering and sin offering you have not required. Then I said, behold, I have come in the scroll of the book. It is written of me. I delight to do your will. Oh my God, your law is within my heart. Notice the posture of the psalmist's heart at this moment. At this point in time, the psalmist says, my heart delights to do your will. In fact, it delights so much in following after you. It is as if your law is within my heart, as if your law is written on my very heart. And what we see take place here, is the psalmist goes to this place where he is hopeless. He's in the middle of the pit. Now he's safe and secure on a solid rock, and his heart has completely changed. He is overjoyed with God. He is celebrating the Lord. His heart delights to follow after God in every single way. And what's amazing is that the psalmist connects what God is actually looking for in us. He says, it's not sacrifice and offering that you delight in, but a heart that is wholeheartedly surrendered to you. You see, the reality is that God doesn't need our stuff, right? He says sacrifices and offerings, they're not enough. It's not what you take delight in. You don't need those things. Like think about it this way. God is the richest being in the universe. This is how rich God is. Whatever God speaks, God gets. That's pretty rich. Like if I were able to say, let there be a Ferrari, and then a Ferrari just showed up, I wouldn't need anything else. That's how rich God is. And the psalmist begins to recognize, that's not what you're after for me. You're not after my stuff. You're not after offerings and sacrifices. What you want is all of me. And in wholehearted surrender, he lays himself out before the Lord. C.S. Lewis, author and philosopher, writes this well when he writes in his book, Mere Christianity. He says, give me all of you. I don't want so much of your time, so much of your talents and money, so much of your work. I want you, all of you. I have not come to torment or frustrate the natural man or woman, but to kill it. No half measures will do. I don't want to only prune a branch here and a branch there. Rather, I want the whole tree out. Hand it over to me, the whole outfit, all of your desires, all of your wants and wishes and dreams. Turn them all over to me. Give yourself to me, and I will make of you a new self in my image. Give me yourself, and in exchange, I will give you myself. My will shall become your will. My heart shall become your heart. See, what God is after is just not our stuff. What God is after is our hearts. And after God rescues the psalmist out of the pit, he surrenders himself fully to the Lord. To put it this way, God is not after half-hearted sacrifice. He's after wholehearted surrender. And oftentimes in our lives, one of the tools that God will use in order to lead us more fully to him is the pit. That God does some of his most refining work in us when we journey through the pit. You see, it's in the pit where we begin to realize what we've actually been trusting in all this time. When we're in the midst of prosperity, it's hard for us to recognize those things, but in the pit, all of that becomes clear. What God wants for us is not our stuff, not what we can give him. What he wants is all of our heart. And oftentimes the tool that God will use to bring us to that place of wholehearted surrender is the pit. There is purpose in every pit. And not only is there purpose in your life, but there's purpose in the lives of those around you. Look at verses 9 and 10. It says, I have told the glad news of deliverance in the great congregation. Behold, I have not restrained my lips, as you know, O Lord. I have not hidden your deliverance within my heart. I have spoken of your faithfulness and your salvation. I have not concealed your steadfast love and your faithfulness from the great congregation. The psalmist recognizes that God has redeemed him, God has saved him, delivered him out of this pit. But that work of deliverance is not just for the psalmist to enjoy, but it is meant to be declared. Why? So that those that are in the pit might find hope for themselves. If you're someone in the room today where you're like, man, God has rescued me out of a great pit, then the call on your life is now to go and share with the world around you and tell them that there is hope for them because we serve a mighty God where there is no pit too deep to rescue you out. He gladly declares to everyone around him what God has done. God rescues us not just to save us, but to send us. That's why at Doxa every single week we end our services with you are loved and you are sent. Why? Because God has saved us in order to share our story with the rest of the world around us. He not only saves us, but he sends us to tell the good news of his deliverance. And here's the thing. The person in your life that needs to hear the story of your testimony most is oftentimes you. The person in your life that needs to hear your testimony most is oftentimes you. Because here's the reality. Once we get out of the pit, it doesn't guarantee us that we're not going to get another one. In fact, most often we find ourselves in different seasons where now we're back into different pits. That's my friend Dusty right now. He finds himself yet again in a pit. And what can be so incredibly helpful for us in those moments is to remember what God has done in our life. And that's what the rest of the psalm was all about. See, the psalmist doesn't just find deliverance from a pit and then forever done, we're good. The psalmist finds himself back into what appears to be another pit. Verses 11 and 12 says, "As for you, O Lord, you will not restrain your mercy from me. Your steadfast love and your faithfulness will ever preserve me, for evils have encompassed me beyond number. My iniquities have overtaken me, and I cannot see. They are more than the hairs of my head. My heart fails me." Notice the reversal that happens in these two verses. In verse 3, the psalmist says that many will see and put their trust in God through his testimony. And now in verse 12, he says, I cannot see. I am surrounded in such a way where I cannot see clearly the power of God. Not only that, but he goes on. Back in verse 8, he says that my heart delights to do the will of God, that his law has been written on my heart. And now at the end of verse 12, he says, my heart has failed me. It's a complete reversal. And so why does someone who is clearly still in a pit start his psalm off by thanking God for delivering him out of a pit? Because he needs to remember more than anybody else at this moment that God is faithful and that he has the power to deliver us no matter how deep the pit might be. That's what he needs to remember for himself. And so he starts off his psalm by reminding him of what God has already done in his life. And as he reminds himself of this and he recognizes his present situation, it brings forth renewed hope. And that's how the rest of the psalm ends. Look at the prayer in verses 13 through 17. It says, "Be pleased, O Lord, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me. Let those be put to shame and disappointed altogether who seek to snatch away my life. Let those be turned back and brought to dishonor who delight in my hurt. Let those be appalled because of their shame who say to me, aha, aha. But may all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. May those who love your salvation say continually, great is the Lord. As for me, I am poor and needy, but the Lord takes thought for me. You are my help, my deliverer. Do not delay, oh my God." The rest of the psalm is the psalmist once again crying out for help in the middle of the pit. And the reason why the psalmist clings to the hope of God, why he trusts in God alone, is because he is able to remember what God has done for him. And that remembrance brings renewed hope and trust in the God who can save and the God who can deliver. And so what does this tell us today? I think one of the key things that this tells us is that whenever we find ourselves out of the pit, I think one of the most helpful things for us is to write down how God delivered us and rescued us out, so that we might be able to go back and read those stories and remember for ourselves that God is with us. He sees us. He's not absent from the pit. His presence is in the pit with us to draw us out and back to him. That there is purpose in every pain, purpose in every pit. All throughout the Old Testament, what we see is we see people inscribing the story of God in stone and on pages. And the reason why is often to remember and to tell the next generation of what God has done. After the nation of Israel gets saved from the land of Egypt and slavery in Egypt and crosses over the Jordan River into the promised land, they set up stones in order to remember that this God has delivered them from slavery. And I think so often that's what we need, right? When we're in the middle of the pit, it's hard to see. Our heart so easily fails us. It's hard to remember what God has done in our life. It's hard to remember his faithfulness. And what we need is to remember and reflect and look back on how God has been faithful over and over and over again. Even when we are faithless, he remains faithful. So if you just got out of a pit, if you're out of a pit right now, I think one of the best things that we can do is just write down those stories. Hang something on our wall so that every time we see it, it's a testimony of what God has done in our lives. That he's a God who can save. He is a God who can redeem and deliver us out of the deepest pit. And here's the thing, you can be confident that no matter what pit you find yourself, that God can deliver you, because here's the best news of everything. He's already delivered you from the deepest possible pit. See, there's a pit called sin and death that none of us could escape, and we all found ourselves in. And here's what's amazing. Jesus steps into that pit where we are to rescue us out. You see, Jesus is the perfect fulfillment of Psalm 40. We see it in the book of Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 10, the author of Hebrews says this. He says, consequently, when Christ came into the world, he said, sacrifices and offerings you have not desired, but a body have you prepared for me. And burnt offerings and sin offerings you have taken no pleasure. Then I said, behold, I have come to do your will, O God, as is written of me in the scroll of the book. Notice how the author of Hebrews connects Psalm 40 with what Christ has come to do. He goes on in verse 8, says, when he said above, you have neither desired nor take pleasure in sacrifices and offerings and burnt offerings and sin offerings. These are offered according to the law. Then he added, behold, I have come to do your will. He does away with the first in order to establish the second. And then here it is, verse 10, and by that will, by Jesus' perfect obedience to God the Father, following the perfect will of God, by that will, we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. What Jesus does is he perfectly fulfills Psalm 40. He is the one that walks fully, perfectly in obedience to the will of God. His heart doesn't waver no matter how many pits he enters. It doesn't waver at all. He follows in obedience. And what Jesus does is he goes down to the pit of sin and death where we are. You see, we are there because that's where we find ourselves because of our sin. Jesus willingly steps into the pit. Jesus enters the pit to rescue us out of it and to draw us back to him. If you want confidence that God can rescue you out of the pit of your life right now, no matter what it is that it might be, look to the cross. Because he's already rescued us out of the deepest pit, the pit of sin and death. And because of that, the good news for us today is that the pit will not have the last word. The same God who lifted you once will lift you again. And one day, Jesus, the one who entered the ultimate pit, will raise you not just to a firm place, but to glory itself. That is what is on the horizon for us. We have a good Savior. Let's put our trust in him. Let me pray.